Much love, everyone. Let's roll with this for the next hour. If you're coming in live, say hello in the comments. If you're coming in after the fact, I mean, you can, of course, say hello in the comments as well, but I'd suggest rolling through maybe a minute or so, and we'll dive in. We're just going to share this in a few groups and just make sure everyone's connected and we're flowing from the space. Just say hello in the comments if you're here, and we'll get started in a few minutes. Well, actually, probably just a minute or so. We're just going to share in a couple groups, invite some of our friends that join us. Just so you know, it's Wednesday and Sunday, we're generally rolling with this, so everyone who has questions and stuff, I know you like sending me the questions on Facebook and Web Messenger, which I also love. But this is a great place because then everyone can benefit from the answers in the space we're creating. So just say hello in the comments. We'll get started in just a minute. I'm just sharing this in a few of our other groups. Make sure everyone is rested. And if you're just getting here and it's, obviously it's evening in the Eastern time. I don't know what time it is in the West. I guess it's 4 o'clock. Just take this as a moment to tune in. If you haven't, maybe this is the first time you're tuning in all day. For many of you, you may be continuously in this space, which is a beautiful thing. Hey, Kathy, much love to you. We're just going to share this in a couple more groups and then we'll dive in. If you have any questions that you want to ask, we can go into that right away. I mean, that's generally what's of my highest priority. I have nothing else to really teach. So I feed off of whatever questions or whatever topics we're going into based on what's available now. All right, so we're just sharing this in this last group here. So who do we got? Okay, Tanya. Hello, Tanya. Much love to you. It's good to have you. And Amina. Oh, it's great. Great to see you. I haven't spoke to you in a while. Well, you can hear Neil in the background. He's loving life. And yeah, welcome again. Another Wednesday session and Sunday. The last one we did, it was on Sunday. We had, Ramaji and Ananda was with us 2 Sundays ago. That's when we did the Rasa transmission. Obviously, that's what I've been speaking about a lot of as of recently after finishing the process with them over about 4 or 5 months. And so it's what I've been pointing to a lot. I mean, naturally, there's a certain energy and transmission that flows through here. I do feel like the rasa is a little bit more detailed in the form of its spiritual surgery. So it's always where I'm pointing people. Hey, Gary. Hey, Alex. Much love to you. But nonetheless, we can dive into any specific questions that are arising for you at this time, any specific elements of topics. I mean, also recognize that the energy that is present here is an energy of resolution. And what I mean by that is that you come into this space with whatever intention you're holding, and you may be clear, you may be not. And naturally, by just returning to the kind of overlaying energy that is here and present, that is also just a reflection of you, your heart, your essence, your nature, which is the pure awareness behind everything in which is arising. Well, obviously, the more in which you can just continue to tune to this, naturally, energy healing and all these things, happens very naturally. I was having a conversation recently with somebody, and it was really along the lines of, the teacher always will just reflect the type of students they have, and the students will just reflect the type of teacher they have, and studying with the level of consciousness system with Ramaji's work. It's been very clear to me in the essence of our new age jungle that we have got ourselves into. There are many teachers who maybe aren't there yet per se, and naturally that creates a certain, I wouldn't say delay, but in a certain sense a delay, like a lot of fluff, a lot of techniques, a lot of modalities, a lot of concepts, a lot of processes, a lot of things that in some form are supporting one on the path because everything is supporting you on the path. Everything is a means to awaken, right? But at the same time, it also delays, in some sense, realization because it makes things more complex than it needs to be, and so it is the reason why people don't like to hear, teachings like just be or just be is a very frustrating teaching for many, because it requires a certain overlaying faith in the bigger picture, a complete surrender for whatever's arising, seeing all just as it is. And that requires a certain level of practice, certain level of willingness to be humble enough to surrender to life, the burning fire of life, right? So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just wanted to say that. Hey, much love, Gary. Been seeing your thread there. It's quite a funny thread. I think it reflects your comedic energy too, so it's great. Scotty, much love to you, man. Good to see you. So again, if there's any questions that we can dive in, I don't have too much else to say other than if there's questions, we can just rest in the space, and give yourself that time, that freedom. This is what we create these spaces for. It doesn't need to have much talking. I like to talk, of course, but it doesn't need to be anything. We can just rest here and feed off of the energy which is created simply by the energy of people in their own rooms in a virtual space. The energy is created here, and know that, and that's why we feel this every time we meet. And this is the nature of the times we're headed into, where I spoke about this in my recent article about the modern guru and the nature of transmission. So rasa transmission is a specific transmission. There's many different types. And really, naturally, I view everybody providing some form of transmission at some point, because we're all energetic beings. And in essence, as more and more people awaken, there's more and more transmission occurring over and over and over. The energy and transmission is nothing other than an energy in which is flowing through one who's humble enough to know that this energy is not theirs, their own. It's an opening to a flow of loving energy in which flows through in whatever means that is to flow through. And the more in which we come into, the typical essence of satsang are these typical types of settings where the teacher is holding all of this energy and then all the students are around. But really what's occurring is that many of those students and many of those disciples, many of those people that are there are also holding very profound levels of energy, and it's the space in which is created amongst all. And this is the more feminine aspect to the essence of spiritual seeking, the essence of spiritual gatherings that is occurring, that forms itself into a celebration, into a space of equality. And this is something that is very prevalent in my own viewing at this time, where we are seeing the dismantling of the typical guru-disciple relationship. It's not to say that the essence of the guru will ever be destroyed. It will always remain. It will always be the same. But it will manifest in a different form, as we're seeing, in a more efficient form, right? And it's great. Oh, Gary, yes. We'll have a chat about that. It's surely hilarious. I love it. Great. Well, again, if you're just coming in, say hello. You may naturally feel the essence of this energy in your heart, and you can move there and just rest in that and abide in that. Okay, so Tanya's saying, I work in an environment that is somewhat toxic, negative attitudes, judgments, gossip, etc. And the more I feel lighter, the heavier it feels in my particular work environment. What are my thoughts? Well, naturally, we go through this awakening process and we become light, L-I-G-H-T, and L-I-T-E. And the nature of that provides us with an ability to see contrast more predominantly, more prevalently. So naturally, if we are feeling light and there is a heavy load on us, we don't feel heavy, So it's quite simple in the essence of this experience. Now, when we come to the connection or the realization of non-duality, or the realization of oneself, what naturally emerges is a seeing that there's no good and bad. However, there is, in some light, a preference or a path of least resistance or a natural way, right? So we could say that water flowing upriver or downriver neither is good or bad. There's just one that abides by the laws of nature. So it's easier, and thus it's natural, and thus it always occurs in that way where water flows downstream. So in the nature of life, it requires not a complex formula other than an abidance in one's nature, which requires one to know oneself. That's the nature of self-realization, but a surrender to the way in which life desires to manifest itself in that sense. So sometimes when we have lived in a certain way for such a long time, there's a certain momentum to that. And then say the awakening process happens very rapidly. And generally those who are seeking through the direct method, it will happen very rapidly. And then because of that, an emergence of clarity in what one actually desires emerges. And thus then the physical reality, the physical dimension doesn't reflect that so much. And so then there's a certain resistance or contrast that requires one to, continue to surrender to what this is, and then thus make certain decisions and choices, which are actions. Any choice is an action, and that action results in a new consequence, which may be you leaving this environment, or maybe you continuing in this environment, and maybe it transforms. Who knows? However, we don't give ourselves up to fantasy land or false hope. We give ourselves up to the reality, which is what is the path of least resistance, what feels most natural, and what feels most obvious. It's always so obvious, right? So that's what I could say to that. I can't tell you what to do. All I could say is that there's a certain natural preference in which arises, which may call for you to act in a certain way. And if one doesn't follow that, well, it will, in many ways, it will inevitably occur. Sometimes in not the most pretty light, and in other times, maybe, the universe will be easy on you. Who knows? So I hope that answers your question. Yes, I'd like to be in a storm. I'll use this to learn something. Yes, I'd like to be still in a storm. Yeah, that could also be it. Sometimes that's a rationalization to continue to support our fear to not change, or not to make choices that will create change. So it's not to say that's what's in this case, but many times, anytime we need some sort of rationalization to support our decisions, or to support a certain experience, a lot of times it's simply there to it's a way for the mind, a way for the egoic self to confine, to continue to hold on, to continue to attach, and things of this nature. So okay, so Anya is saying, hey Cora, I was wondering what you feel about human design, numerology, astrology in relation to the path of deepening into self-realization. So in my experience, my perspective on self-realization is very simple, and that is put the cart behind the horse. So in other words, realize the self as quickly as possible. We're in a time in which this can occur. The rasa transmission is a symbol of this. Advaita, the path of non-duality, for those teachers who have the correct pointers, that's also a method and a way in which it can happen very quickly. So with that said, it's saying put all of your attention, if not the majority of your attention, on this, and so in at least from my perspective, there are certain core techniques or core methods in which that can support, and the transmission is one of them. The path of being, or the method of being aware of awareness, which is the statement "I am that I am" in a practicing form, in a doing form, which all true teachers will point you to in some way. And then the tantric relationship to that is the loving everything as it arises. In other words, a complete surrender to the flaming fire of emotional resistance. So inquiring to all emotional resistance that arises, and seeing that any resistance that arises in the mirror is yourself, and thus needs to be surrendered to and embraced and accepted in whatever way that looks like to you. And so what this is kind of pointing to, of course, is that whatever is spontaneously arising for you that seems interesting, that seems like it's of resonance, is naturally going to support that in some way. Because those two techniques, if you want to call them techniques, those are all encapsulating. They include everything. There's nothing left out with them. That's why all spiritual techniques point to those two techniques. And those techniques are within all spiritual techniques, right? So we're cutting straight to the shit. Now, astrology, let's put it this way. If we read an astrology reading and someone gives us a really good reading, and we gain deeper clarity into what has already occurred, because astrology is your blueprint. It's what's already been occurring. So when you get a clear reflection from somebody about what that is, all that can do is give you a more faith in a surrendering to what is, to what has always been, to what has never changed. Your nature, your life path, your tendencies, your et cetera, right? Your karmic energy. So the more clear that reading can be, naturally, the more clear you can be in your willingness to surrender to what is, because you recognize more and more that you don't have as much control of the ship as you think you do. It's a makeup of energetic imprints that have occurred for millions of years. So in relativity. So of course it's going to be useful, right? And so in my experience, from not understanding what self-realization and prior to this, my perspective on astrology would be, okay, well, your astrology would have no importance after self-realization. And in some sense it doesn't. But in another sense, what really occurs, as Ramana Maharshi has very clearly outlined when it came to the question about karma, which was a recognition that your karmic energy of bondage is what dissipates, and your karmic energy of enjoyment is what is accentuated. So in other words, your astrology, your nature will be accentuated in the most beautiful light after self-realization occurs, and your tendencies in which are more detrimental naturally will be fizzled out, more so because you're not judging those experiences any longer. You recognize it's just part of your nature, and it's not something that needs to be you need to be separate from. You see, so it's beautiful. And I've used all of them. In my view, human design is the most accurate. And I have somebody actually that's really good at reading for those that want to be connected in that space. Maybe we'll do a live feed on that at some point to really get into this. But we recognize that the realization of truth is coming to a space where there's no ideas held about anything, but yet because of that, we're free to abide in the natural laws of existence that are seemingly apparent in this timeline, because we are living in this timeline, right? So I could say that, well, yeah, gravity doesn't exist, right? It doesn't actually exist. It's an illusion, but of course I live in a timeline in which it does, in which there's a collective belief that gravity does exist. And thus, because of the strength of that belief, based on the collective energy, if I were to jump off the third story of this building, actually, I'd probably hurt myself. So we see that I don't need to be attached to the fact that gravity is real, and I believe that it's all material and all that. But at the same point, I'm okay with abiding by those laws too. Right? I'm not resistant to that, and that's the beauty in which this presents. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, so there's a question on psychedelics. Are psychedelics, how can they affect the spiritual path? We're in the West, we like to play with things, we like to jump into stuff, and in the tantric view, all is welcome, right? It's all welcome. So I can say that, sure, nothing is left out. It's all welcomed. Now, the nature of true tantra, or true loving, the practicing of loving everything, is coming from a deep space of balance. So balance for everybody is different, but we always know what that balance is. Your intuition will always point you to that. Sure, the mind can rationalize a million ways to say why doing something so many more times, or doing something all the time, or something that you need, blah, 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 blah. It can rationalize this, of course. And we need to stay vigilant in our perception to actually pierce through that illusionary distraction of mind. So all I can say is that psychedelics can surely act as doorway tools, gateways to experience higher states of consciousness. But remember, anything that is utilized within relativity, it has a karmic repercussion. And I'm not saying good or bad. I'm saying if we utilize something, we're borrowing. So we have to repay that loan. So if you're utilizing a physical substance to experience a higher dimensional, unseen spiritual experience, there will be a loan to repay. And that generally is repaid through the pendulum swing moving in the other direction, right? Everybody initially in a psychedelic movement was obsessed with opening third eye and the crown, forgetting that the energy system works in a cyclical fashion. It is a whole system. And if the lower system is not balanced before one moves to the higher system, then it's like jumping to level 10 before you're ready for it. You're not going to be able to beat the boss. And then if you get maybe lucky a couple times, or if then you're gonna set yourself up, because your expectation, your pride builds right? This righteousness, this pride builds, and then you're faced with the reality, and you're humbled again. You see? So in my experience, you can come to these places that psychedelics offers you in a more turtle-like fashion. That is more protecting. It's a safer method. It's one that provides a further long-term stability, right? So, and we must know that the experience of most psychedelics in this time are heavily compromised, because psychedelics are spirit energies. They're natural spirit energies, and many of these spirit energies are compromised at this point, because there's a lot of energies that are not so supportive of awakening, of being you're knowing your true self. So thus, if you're utilizing things, one always has to continue. When one continues to remain humble, they move at the pace in which they know they can handle. And thus, if they're moving at the pace in which they know they can handle, they're always prepared for what's to come. They'll always be able to handle what's to come. However, if they jump into the pride game and they jump a little too fat, they will always be humbled. And maybe it'll happen very subtly. Sometimes it'll happen more drastically, depending on, and that, again, that comes down to the level of degree of balance and your intention behind how you're approaching anything, right? Be it yoga, substance, finding a teacher, whatever, right? So I don't necessarily advocate for it or against it. I say trust your knowing. You're going to do whatever you need to do anyways. All I can say is that if you have faith in what I'm speaking about, or if you'd like to receive the rasa transmission or some other transmission, whatever, you're going to move to where you need to be in a much quicker way, and you won't have any distractions. You'll recognize everything else is a distraction, so you won't have the desire to go into those things, right? But leave it as you like. So Chris is speaking of a microdosing group he started. Experiences in Keylontic. I mean, sure, you can share what you like. I mean, I probably wouldn't advocate anything of it at this point. I mean, it comes in different ways. There's different ways in which it can come to, and everybody is surely different, right? Everybody is surely different, and a lot of times too, you're looking at a more chemical level of something in which is needing to have that chemical attention. Some people, they have chemical imbalances in their body, and they're going into spiritual based seeking, or their ceremonies or things of this nature, and they're not stable. They don't have the foundation to deal with that energy, and thus that it affects them in a very negative way, right? Or at least it just prolongs things much longer than it needs to, right? So again, if everything is done in balance and with proper intention, I mean anything can be utilized. And we also must understand that there is a certain difference between the realization of one's true nature and healing. Sometimes we see them go hand in hand, and yes, in some way they are going hand in hand, but there's different aspects to various forms of healing and spiritual self-realization, right? Just realizing your true nature, because one can be still realized but yet have a load of physical and even mental healing that is still to occur, right? So and I feel naturally it fizzles out quite quickly, but it's just differentiating the two. Yeah, Chris. But thanks for sharing that, brother. Josh, what is the rasa transmission disconnecting in our brains, beliefs, etc.? That's a good question. I've never actually asked Ramaji that in particular. That'd be a better question for Ramaji or Ananda. I mean, in my experience, it does feel exactly how he's described, which is a very gentle rain-like energy that comes down through your brain and purifies aspects of your brain. I feel like your entire energy field. I wouldn't say just this. And I mean, in essence, yes, it's transforming belief structures. It's loosening space. I mean, that's the best way to put it. It's opening space up, right? For your true self to do its work, for you to see that the true nature of the self, the true self is far beyond the intensity of weight of thought. You know, like it thought and feeling and all of the sensational experience, it all becomes so minuscule compared to the true nature of knowing. And thus then what occurs is like a magnetic pull of all your thoughts and feelings and sensations towards the true nature. So I was having a conversation today explaining, in my experience, what's occurring is just a like an instantaneous experience. So, you know, everything is instantaneous. The reason why there's no more questions is because answers are instantaneously there. So it seems like there's no question about anything. Thus, maybe questions still arise, but instantaneously everything is known. So, and this is the nature of how the true existence is to occur, is that if you are the self and you know all, then naturally in every moment that you're needing something, it will be provided. So you're empty enough to know that your egoic self knows nothing, right? You know nothing about anything because you want to know nothing. You want to be empty enough so that the moment in which something is required, the truest essence of what is required comes forth. That's the nature of realization, is being willing and humble enough to know that you're a speck of dust in this infinite eternity. And because of that willingness to surrender to that, then you see the loving grace of the mother. You experience directly the loving grace of the mother that is willing to provide you with anything the moment in which you're clear enough to and willing enough and open enough to accept it. And I mean, this is it. This is what we're all desiring. We just want our mom. We all just want our mother back, you know? Would an intense bodywork session be more effective before or after Rasa transmission? Yeah, sure. I mean, I can speak from my experience in the sense that I did a lot of work before, sure, but at the same time my body wasn't perfect, my mind wasn't perfect, I wasn't completely detoxed, you know. So again, if that's what's feeling right to you, then that's what's feeling right to you, you know. I mean, remember, realization doesn't take care of your worldly issues, you know. If your body is out of whack, it will surely make you so relaxed in a space where those things can very quickly heal, but you may still require certain things and certain elements for that to occur. You know, who knows? For me, in the spring, I'm going to do a much deeper detox of my body, complete detox of my body, and much longer fasting, because I know that, sure, the process has ended, but yet, you know, I feel, you know, my gallbladder's a bit off. I can feel my digestive system needs work. You know, I don't know, I'd like to get bigger again, you know, gain muscle and feel more athletic, you know, like there's these elements that just naturally feel like you come back to the place in which you've always desired to be, but potentially maybe have judged those things because you thought they weren't spiritual. At least in my experience, that was the case, you know, because the majority of people on spiritual seeking path are in a constant space of judgment, whether one thing is going to bring them closer to enlightenment or farther away from enlightenment. But that's not really what is occurring at all, right? There's a certain truth to this, but only to the degree in which one is living ethically. That is why the supreme commandment is just treat another as you'd like to be treated, right? Everything else goes, really, you know, because everything is summed up within that singular ethical law. And not to oversimplify, but you get the point, right? And so most of you, I'm assuming here, are in some form ethically nice people. Right? And that is the usefulness of spiritual teachings and ethics and commandments, so that guideline can support one in coming to a certain balance. But it doesn't mean there's going to be a body-mind perfection as a precursor to realization, if you get what I'm saying. Right? Because the relative experience is forever evolving and perfecting itself, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is the true eternity. So realization prepares one, it returns one to the eternal life, living eternally, recognizing there is no death, there is no birth. Right? It's all just one continuity. Yeah, and yeah, it's always so much better to get a really profound reading from somebody who's clear, right? because it helps you reaffirm things. It goes into the depth of the science. At the same time, too, doing your own research and learning the science yourself is a beautiful thing, right? Everyone should have some sort of understanding of the science of astrology and all of it, because it'll be so simple to you to understand the nature of movements of energies and forecasting, decisions and things of this nature. Not to get too caught up in that, but there's a clarity with that. Is it better before or is it better after? To be honest, I don't think it matters, Josh. It's like, I don't think it matters too much. And you can ask Ramaji too, right? See what he says, but I don't think it matters too much. So there's more questions, we can jump in. Hey, Jason, much love, brother. And if you haven't said hello, say hello. It'd be good to see who else is here. I know there's a bunch of you on. And if you're coming in late, there's a lot of good questions that were just answered, so you can review and go back. One note too is, originally these were all planned to be just exclusively on our heart-centered leader program group. So I'm making some adjustments to that, because I like having them open to everyone on live. At the same point, the nature of having for a separate group is simply because there's a certain exchange that occurs in the energetic field with this, and so that exchange happens by way of financial exchange. Now Bitcoin and Ethereum, that's what I'm accepting. Sometimes it's other forms of barter, but I always open that up to make sure that people know of that energetic exchange, because I am opening these up for free pretty much all the time now. But we have those heart-centered leader programs going for people that want a little bit more depth. But at the same time, I'd like to keep them open on Facebook. So we're flowing with that. You guys have the link, and you can check out how to register and stay connected on that program. We're gonna have some cool stuff going on in Ottawa, more ecstatic dances and really celebratory experiences. I love chatting and answering questions, but it's really just a celebration from my vantage point now, and many of you receiving the rasa and other forms of transmission. I mean, this is, in this sense, you're experiencing some energy here. And so, the realization of your true nature from a non-dual perspective is a recognition you're already here, and you've already been here. And so as long as you're continually abiding in that energy, it will eventually occur at some point. That's the basis of it. So from my vantage point, why not celebrate constantly? And so we're going to be doing a lot more aesthetic dances with music and just more community spaces. Like next Saturday, we have a real deep, authentic relating workshop that with Brian and Christelle of getting comfortable, intimate experiences with a stranger, with a romantic partner, with a friend, in touch, in intimacy and connection, but also in conversation, peaceful communication, really being able to express your energetic self. Right, because this is really what it is. If you're tuning into all of this, but yet you're not able to articulate and communicate it, especially to those people around you who may have no clue and no idea about what these things are, it's a great way to practice. Right, it's a really great way to practice. So that'll be next Saturday in Ottawa. We'll maybe do some live stream for that too for people online, but highly recommended for you guys to jump in with us. And I did mention a bit about cryptocurrency. I don't know who else has jumped on the bandwagon, but some fun stuff, fun conversation about that topic too. So again, if there's any other questions, we can jump into it. Hey Gary, I missed saying hello. Much love, brother. Hey, I'm going through a very stressful time at work, and it's affecting my home life over last couple of weeks. Any suggestions, or have you covered this at the beginning of the session? Well, let's feel into that. I mean, it's naturally coming in, and it's arising within you as an emotional experience. So let's not let it get any more than just what it is. So if you can close your eyes, if you want, Chris, and anyone else can do this with us, we're just moving the attention directly to the sensation that's occurring in the body. That's all I want you to focus on, nothing else. And I just want you to continue to bring your attention to directly the sensation in the body, probably in the stomach. At least I can feel it there for you. So stomach in the gut, maybe in the heart a little bit. And we're just bringing all of our attention to this place, relieving ourselves of the privilege to be interested in the story around what's occurring. It may be there when you return to it, but let's just for this moment focus upon the direct sensation. And we're just practicing this over and over. Can we just continue to be authentically real with ourselves? And that is, there's a heavy emotion somewhere in the body, and that's what desires our attention. So we can continue to bring our attention there. The crown is also open for the natural energy flow to release itself. So if the energies would like to release as they are now, you feel it moving through the top of the head, and it releases kind of like a fountain. So we'll just let that go for this moment. And we just continue to bring here, and now we see that there's a lightness in the body that's naturally there. And if not, then we can come back. But maybe Chris, if you'd like to describe in the chat, it's obviously easier, when you can just talk it, but if you can go in the chat just for a moment and describe what you're experiencing now. Did it get worse? Did it expand? Did it release? Did it get light? Did it disappear? Just describe what's occurred there. And if you're doing this with us, you may have already experienced what you need, but maybe you need to continue to focus upon just what's arising. That's all we're doing. We're just being, to be authentic is just to be aware of what's arising. Like if you cut your knee and it was bleeding, your authentic attention would just be to focus on the cut knee. You don't focus on anything else. You put all your attention there, you bandage it up, and we move along. So we'll just wait to see what Chris has to say. Lighter? Okay, yeah. If you want to continue to just be with that, I felt it release through the top of my head, but again, when we're continuing to come back to the vantage point of just purely being aware, the body, the energies, everything, the whole system, we have complete faith that it's going to do what it needs to. And thus, in this case, it does what it needs to, right? It releases it. It opens the channels, the meridians, the energies, the chakras, whatever you want to call it, and they naturally release what it's needed. It's the same with fasting. You get out of the way completely, your body readapts. It heals itself. It reconfigures itself. Done. Right? And so this is the practice, we come into this space now because we've set the intention. We know we're coming here for the next hour. We sit and we can do the practice. Now it's a reminder that this session is taken into every moment of the day, so that no matter what's arising, what emotions, whatever, there's a continual movement, right? And it's not for you to decide when it should be over, or when it should have been released, or why isn't it gone. It's to be continuously, sincerely practiced over and over and over until it's not there. And even so, it still continues to be, it's like a perpetual surrender to being authentically aware of what's here. So if what's aware is this emotion, and yet we feel like we're busy, we got things to do, we got to, and it's not to say you can't do things while you're doing this practice. That's the master. The true master is able to do that. But until that's the case, we sit, you close your eyes, we focus upon it, we rest in there, we open the crown, we let it release, and it's gone. So this is the perpetual practice that we constantly are needing to be reminded to do and to continue, and that's what this space is for. Right? There's no other real solution. There's a million other energy healing modalities, don't get me wrong, but they all come back really down to what we've just went through. Right? which we went through various steps, but it's all occurring just by simply being aware. It's, again, when something physically happens, like if a fire started in your room or if a tiger walked in the door, your authentic nature is to get up and run the fuck out, or put water on the fire, or, you know. So, but yet when we have an emotional experience, it's like, oh, I'll deal with it later, or, you know. But yet, if we were to let the fire continue to go, but what's going to happen to your house as you're sitting on the couch, just chilling, you know, eating some chips and watching television? The fire would burn the house down, you know. So when we're authentically real with ourselves about what's actually occurring, well, what's actually occurring is that there's an emotion brewing up inside of us, and we need to take a look at that. And it's nothing other than what we just did, which then naturally released it, you know. So remember, as we do this, and Chris, I want you to continue with this for the duration of this call, if not longer, for as long as you need, but doing so without the intention of it needing to heal or fix or release. That's the beautiful key, is that, can I just be okay with the pain of this anxiety, or the pain of this heart, or the pain of whatever? This is the nature of the practice, right? Because returning to awareness is aware of the thought that this needs to fix itself, right? Not becoming the thought, this needs to fix itself. Be aware of the thought, this needs to fix itself. And thus then we're not paying attention to any of that. If it wants to fix itself or not fix itself, or release or not release, you know, we just continue to come back to who we actually are, which is awareness itself. Right? So continue with, I mean, it's already fairly light, as you said, and as I can feel, but you can continue with the practice, and let me know in a little while how it's occurring, or ask another question. After full awakening, I am curious what types of friendships are attractive and which are not. Are toxic relationships a thing of the past? Or must boundaries still be drawn to self-protect? Well, I can say that 1,000 was reached for me in December. So it's only been, 2 months, two and a half. So, I mean, it wasn't, it was drastically different, but yet at the same time wasn't too much different before and after in the terms of relationships. All that occurs is that you just know yourself. Thus, you know how you'd like to speak and act and be, and you know your boundaries. Thus, the idea of needing to affirm them isn't so much as required, That's why I've always been questioning of the whole boundary movement in the new age culture of relationships and things. Yeah, we need to draw boundaries, but if you're naturally living who you are, what's being presented to you as what's seemingly a crossing of your boundary is just your old self that you're perceiving and resisting, because third dimension has that delay. So if you have relationships that you've had for many years and you haven't been acting in this enlightened way, or whatever you want to call it, and you have people that are, all that's occurring is now you can actually see what they're doing. So thus it seems like, oh, now they're crossing my boundaries, I think. But no, it's because they've always been like that, and now you actually see it, and you're like, wait a minute, I don't accept this within myself, or I've accepted this within myself, and thus now I need to accept it here, right? So no, acceptance means emotional acceptance. It doesn't mean, someone's punching you and you allow them to keep punching you, I'm just accepting this. It's just what it is. And that's not the case, unless that's how you normally would act. If you normally think that you getting punched over and over is okay, then by all means. But naturally, acceptance means I'm emotionally accepting the fact that I'm being attacked, and it's not on my personal ego, because that ego doesn't exist. That's the nature of acceptance. So I am not being attacked, right? Because I am the true nature of self. But it feels preferable just to naturally move out of and dodge the punch. So you see that there's that difference, right? So it's not to say that we don't, if somebody is crossing a boundary, we don't say something, or we don't, remove ourselves from the situation or things. But it's that we're emotionally resolving how it feels like it's attacking us, because it's no longer really attacking us. There's no one there for it to attack. But yet we recognize in this physical incarnation, there's a natural path of least resistance, which is, we don't need to be in a toxic environment of people. We desire to be in a loving environment that we know is true, because we are that. That's the only way we could know it's true. You see? So it fizzles out. You're going through that fizzling out where it's presented because the only way anything is presented is because you've done that change, and because you've done that shift inwardly, it's presented, and then it has to be also accepted here because there's no other there. It's just also another reflection of you, and that's how it's brought full circle. Right? So that does require at times conversation about something, or a communication, or a speaking of your truth. There are all these terms the New Age has spread, right? Which are all great things. They're good pointers, but it does, it's not really that complex. And embody everything you desire for others to be. Give everything you desire from others to them, and then there's nothing left from that. It all comes back to the golden rule. That's why every spiritual master, Buddha, Jesus, everyone, they all said the exact same golden rule, the singular golden rule: treat another as you'd like to be treated. But really what that's saying is be what you desire for others to be. How could you ever expect them to be anything else but that? Right? Which is all inclusive. It's all inclusive. It's all inclusive because everything is utilized as a means to further awaken. In other words, everything wants your love. Everything is just waiting for you to love it. So I hope that answers your question. If there's any other questions, we can get into them. I think oh yeah, there we go. I have a fear about reaching 1,000. Maybe if Gary's here too, if you want to chime in on this, that'd be cool. As I will no longer be interested in making films or making money or doing anything at all. Can you speak to that? Well, I'll tell you, I lived the monk renunciate life for about 4 or 5 years. I lived off maybe $20,000 over that entire period of time. And that's just income that I was personally getting. Of course, I was getting, people providing me things and food and space and love, and it taught me and showed me the nature of abundance that never leaves and is always available. However, for me at least, I've been wanting to make loads more money, and from a very abundant way, a very beautiful way, and a way that's not just confined to spiritual teaching or healing or workshops, or whatever way that it's going to manifest. And that's what I view cryptocurrency as. I view that as the means in which so many are going to experience financial freedom, because it's the representation of the metaphysical essence of currency and value exchange and gamification in this game, in this video game that we live in. So in my experience, it was very different. Because the only fear you have is of the self in which is going to be destroyed, like this false identity that will be destroyed. So as it's destroyed, then there's nothing holding back the natural flow of your energy. It's like the dam is open, the dam bursts. So if the water wants to flow, it's going to flow now because the dam is no longer there, and the dam is the false mind, the false self, the ego. So now if the water is meant to flow, it's going to flow. It's going to flow exactly in alignment with your destined energy, your karmic energy, your astrology, right? So it's really not for you to determine per se, it's for you to surrender to and see what comes of it. Because surely everything could drastically change, but also who knows, right? It's not, and I'll say that nothing in nature happens drastically, right? So it's very anticlimactic, but in the same way, it's also really beautiful. It's everything you could ever imagine. So yeah, that's not what happened for me. I wanted to freely live in this life, knowing true freedom, true fearlessness, to do everything that my renunciate monk self that was in its cave meditating 8 hours a day, thinking all these things are not spiritual. It's a bursting from that place. And I've spoken about this before, how I felt like a newborn baby, just not knowing really anything about anything. Sure, it seems like I know a lot of things because I'm answering and I'm speaking like a motorboat, but this is only because questions are arising. It's really why, like, if you go and look at my Facebook page, I'm hardly posting lately because I don't have anything to say. And if I'm posting, it's generally because I'd ask a question on the topic, right? Because it's just, there's an awe and a celebration in life, and now a desire just to get my head down, just to be in the trenches, to serve, to work, to act. There's so many things that this world needs improvement, or our desires, it's naturally improving, and I'd like to be a part of that, right? So it's just forget everything you've heard. Just forget everything you've heard and everything you think and all the things, and drop it all. It's not going to have any use, because experiencing it is a world of difference, right? A complete world of difference. But like I said, yeah, I've just wanted to experience so much more. It sounds like you're saying it is possible for a lust of power lust of power comes from the true self and not the ego. No, it's not. Drop all these ideas. These are just ideas. It's all spontaneous. When we walk into a forest, everything is supremely ordered, but none of it seems that way. It's all spontaneous. The leaf falls, the rabbit runs across, the wind blows, the rain comes down, the tree breaks and crashes. It's all spontaneous. Nothing has any order. So sure, you could say a million things about what's actually occurring and how it's occurring, but really it's just spontaneous. You have no idea of how it's really occurring. And this is it, is we really know nothing. And that's all realization is humbly accepting the fact that you know nothing. And then because of that, whatever is to happen is God's will. And what that means is that it's perfect exactly as it arises. Because inwardly, there is no ideas about what's occurring. You're not thinking, is this an abuse of power, or this, that, or this, or that. You may have some logical perspectives on that and practical ideas about what that is. And we could say that when you come to your natural essence, you will not be greedy or do these different things. But it's also not that. Remember, the sun eventually will get to a place where it's going to engulf every planet in the solar system, and it's going to kill everything that's on every planet. Can we say that that's bad, or that's not spiritual, or that no, we can't say anything about that. It's just the way it is. It's the universe doesn't give a shit about anything really. It just expands in its love, and it knows that it's all coming back to the same place anyways, right? So it's to know that there's consequences to choices. But if you come to the place where there's no one that can suffer consequences, you only abide in a fearlessness. Right? So you abide in a fearlessness no matter the decisions or choices that you're making or what you have made. But remember, coming back to the point I made about karmic energy, your karmic energy of enjoyment will expand and your karmic energy of bondage will dissipate. And if enjoyment to you is money, or enjoyment to you is sex, or enjoyment to you is just sitting on a couch all day, or enjoyment to you is eating a bunch of Cheetos, well, that's what enjoyment is to you. Right? And so remember, if we're only focused on our own path, all the rest falls away. If everyone is just to focus on their own path, everything else drops away. Now, yes, we use others as a mirror. We use others as tools, because that's really what it is, what the reflection of others are. They're tools for you to see yourself further. And that's the beauty of comparison. But it's a double-edged sword, because it also acts as a means for us to distract ourselves, to slow ourselves down, to judge ourselves, to etc. Right? So if there's no other, well then, you're good to go. Yeah, that's a great point, Gary. Great point. So Josh, read what Gary has mentioned about that. It's totally that, and the whole making. I can relate to the making a name element where. Previously setting myself up as a teacher prior to 1,000, there was a certain desire to be this grand teacher. And that was simply because that's all I saw. I saw a bunch of other teachers who were grand teachers. I'm like, oh, well, I'd love to be that. And now it's not to say that, it's to say that there's no real desire for that to occur because there's such a completion here. However, will that occur? Who knows? Maybe it will. Right, and that's generally how anything great happens in life. Is there's no expectation or attachment to anything happening. It's like someone, it's like a crush you had. If you're all over her and needy and all that, then all of a sudden she's running away. But as soon as you're, maybe you're pretending that you don't need her or whatever. I don't know. At least that's what I used to play. If you're just whole in yourself and you know yourself, then that's where the attraction lies for things that are meant to be around you. So yeah, I completely relate with that. Everything just here is complete. That's it. So in the highest of experiences really is to share this completion with others. So that's why I love doing these still, is because it's great to connect. But it doesn't need to be in this format. We could just go have dinner, or we can just go to dance or listen to music, and just being in the presence of others who are also clear. It's the most fulfilling energy. It's the most beautiful thing. Right. So then everything happens spontaneously after that. And if you're meant to, manifest certain things, you will. If not, then not. I just know, I don't really know anything. I could say I'm 27, I have all these years to go, but who knows? The roof could fall on my head right now. So, the topic on Cheetos. Well, remember, nothing is real. So yeah, you could say it's not good for the body, but if it's not real, we've just really molded that to be so. And maybe that's applicable for this timeline. Remember, it's like I said with gravity. Gravity in essence doesn't exist. It's why monks can levitate. Right? But because the collective energy believes that gravity exists, well, then that force becomes more difficult to manipulate in some sense. But it's really because one doesn't really know how to manipulate it. If you practiced enough or you studied enough, you'd be able to do it. So it's like old masters in India would drink like a huge thing of rum to show that they wouldn't get drunk off it. Right? So yeah, you could say that Cheetos are bad for you, but then you could also not say that and still eat them, and maybe it won't affect you. Right? And recognize everything is just moving in its natural timeline. Right? So in this time, we could say that the collective is more health conscious. So we're not smoking really that much. We're eating well, more so. We're making a lot of shifts. So if we're flowing with the river and we recognize we are a part of the whole, well then yeah, it feels more natural maybe not to do that, because that's what the environment is bringing forth. That's what the environment is presenting. Right? So it's not to say that it's absolutely bad for you, or absolutely. It's just to say that everything is self-fulfilling. Right? You can find a scientific study that pretty much backs almost any perception on, like, let's say, nutrition. Right? And that's simply because there's an infinite amount of perceptions that are influencing scientific studies, so showing that science is just a reflection. There's no objective reality. Right? At least that's my perspective. There's no real objective reality, because how would you ever experience objectivity? You're only ever experiencing subjectivity. And even when subject and object merge, well, then there's nothing. That's my piece. This has been fun, though. I'm enjoying sharing this space with you guys. I really am grateful for it. If there's any other questions, we can dive in. We'll just go a little bit longer and then just end with a final meditation. Yeah, you're welcome in. Sticky mind stuff. I don't know what the question is. I will just leave it open just a few more minutes for questions, and we'll just finish with a kind of meditation and just tune off for the night. For those in Ottawa, I'm always welcome, inviting people to come see me. I do sessions at my house and just even check-ins. It's a really social month for me, so I'm enjoying getting out. I'll be speaking at an elementary and high school next week. I'm really excited about, because I really want to move towards bringing this simplicity to them, because I feel like they probably understand it best, more than anyone. So that'll be an interesting experience. And then again, next Saturday we have that authentic relating experience, peaceful communication. It's going to be so fun, so fun. Can you say something about people changing their names, Joshua G? Oh shit! I went through that where I was telling everyone to call me Sheik, and I still relate with that because people called me that when I was young, when I was in high school. So people can call me Sheik if you want, but I don't know. I dropped any need for that at this point. Maybe it'll come later. It's a beautiful thing. It's all resonance, What do you resonate with? To be honest, Corey doesn't totally resonate with me. Sheik doesn't, like no real name. It's I read something recently happened where I was reading about, there's a lot of guys doing interviews about their, some people were involved in this, may be out there for some people, but there's a lot of interviews on YouTube of people who claim to be in maybe abducted by aliens or involved in secret space programs where they were, special, operatives in certain things. And it seems like a sci-fi, Star Wars type thing, but you'd be surprised what's really going on in this universe. And they spoke about certain races who don't have names, and they just experience each other with energy. They don't feel the need to even talk too much or things. And that's really what it is, It's just energy, right? So if a certain name represents certain energy, then so be it. Sticky mind stuff, like mental momentum of old habits. Well, I don't know what your question is in particular. I mean, the nature of karmic energy is just momentum. That's all it really is. Generally momentum of many, many, many lifetimes, right? So the nature of awakening in this time is extremely intense for people because there's a lot of purification that's occurring. And that happens on physical, mental, emotional, and energetic, spiritual level, right? So on your mental body, your neurological imprints have certain imprints. It's like etching your fingernail into a piece of wood. At some point, there's a mark that you make, and it'll take a while to buffer that out, right? So sometimes depending how old you are, you'll have certain tendencies and habits that it means nothing. You can still purify them, but maybe it takes longer at some point. But it depends to the degree in which you've really ingrained those patterns in your neurological system, right? So receiving healing and doing your work to connect back with source so that healing flows through you, it will assist with the purification of that, and it will dissolve those tendencies, right? But again, you're in a cyclical wheel of habitual experience. So once you see that you're not really controlling that too much. You can only just be aware and then continue to be aware and allow for the fizzling out of those things to occur, right? So that's the teaching. There is no doer, because there is no doer. Good stuff. Studying for a test in the morning and listening to you. Okay. I hope you pass. Okay. Well, if there's any last questions, throw them out. But let's just jump into a meditation. Let's just finish off the meditation where you come to the heart. I mean, you don't need to come to the heart. Maybe you're just tuned in just to the non-localized self, pure awareness, because awareness is not focalized in any specific area of the body. Remember, we just use the pointer of the heart because generally that's where it's felt for most people. But we can just come there. The eyes can be open or closed. It doesn't matter. If there's a question that's still remaining, then feel free to ask it. I'll answer it after. But let's just come here and just forget everything I've said. Forget all the questions. Forget anything that's there. Just surrender it all and just come back to what you are. And just forget about everything. There's nothing needed here. You just be yourself. Just your unique self. Just again, bring the attention over and over to the heart and surrender anything else that's here. Nothing else is needed. Okay. So we can bring our attention here. I mean, you can continue to remain in that space, of course. You know, as you notice the eyes open or eyes closed, sometimes it makes a difference, but as you continue to really abide in that place, then it doesn't so much. So yeah, that's our flow for today. If there's any other questions, just leave them here. Like I said, that authentic conscious relationship workshop we're doing next Saturday is a really beautiful experience for people that are really tuning into this and becoming more silent, right? Because then you recognize the power in which your words have. Not to say you don't need to speak, obviously, right? Speaking so much, but speaking in a way in which deeply communicates where you're residing, and that's really what we're getting into in this: is how to speak energetically. You know, how to really communicate authentically what's arising for you without the fear of judgment or what's going to come, or societal norms, that type of thing. And then not only that, being able to deeply relate, eye gazing, touch, tantric exercises, not just romantic, but all kinds of relationships. So that's next Saturday in Ottawa. That I'd love to see you guys there. And then we'll do this again on Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And yeah, if there's questions, there's questions. It is a beautiful session we had today. So deeply grateful for all the questions that came through and everyone else who shared their perspectives. If you're just coming in, I'd highly recommend to rewatch this maybe. And share this video if you felt there was value. I'm sure a lot of people may connect with that. So much love. Feel free to connect with me. I'm still doing a lot of Skype calls lately. It's a really social month for me, so I'm enjoying that. And we'll connect soon. Much love.